As rightly quoted by the great human rights activist Malcolm X, we need more light about each other. Light creates understanding. Understanding creates love. Love creates patience, and patience creates unity. Venerated President, Vice Chancellor, honorable panel members, and guests of honor, delegates, members from the print and the electronic media, reverend guests, and members of faculty and staff, coordinators of the convention, and my dear student colleagues. This is Prachi Jha, a student of BA Economics first year at ASPM University. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you to the plenary session of the National HR Symposium 2021 with the theme Work, Workplace and Workforce Re-strategizing HR. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sparky Patnaik, Assistant Professor in School of Business, ASPM University, will be the moderator of this session. She has done her Masters in the Management and is a gold medalist in her batch. Her doctorate research work on psychological contract has been highly appreciated. She has a number of publications to her credit in various national and international journals, indexed in ABDC, Scopus, and UGC Care. Thank you, ma'am, for your pleasant being. I now take the privilege of introducing the panel members of this session, who make us honored by their timely presence. Dr. G.P. Rao, who has spent over 37 years in a fruitful HR career. Prior to starting his consulting career, he worked with large Indian companies like SAIL, JK, Belaz, and RIL. His last assignment was with Recron Malaysia, a Reliance company, as Chief of HR and Management Services. He did a degree in law, Masters in Commerce, Public Administration, Social Work and Business Management, and certification in assessment tools of MBTI, OPQ, SHL, Human Edge, etc. He also received an honorary PhD, and he is fondly known as GP in HR circles. His focus areas are business coaching, workplace synergy, tech-driven L&D, HR advisory, D&I mentoring, etc. He enjoys being assistant moderator, discussion facilitator, and inspirational speaker. We sincerely welcome you, sir. Dr. Sajeev Nair, who is currently associated with one of Asia's leading providers of comprehensive environment management services, Ramki Enviro, managing 2CISO Tools, Global Chief HR Officer, and Chief Transformation Officer. Dr. Sajeev has over 27 years of global experience in operations and human capital management across diverse sectors that include paints, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, information technology-enabled services, R&D, and waste management across Indian, multinational, and government organizations. He is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt and a doctorate in skill development from the Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. We wholeheartedly welcome you, sir. Colonel Ashwini Kumar Joshi. Colonel Ashwini Kumar Joshi has a spectacular and diverse experience of over 4 decades. He took premature retirement from the Indian Army in 2007 and migrated to the corporate sector as Chief HR Officer, Gati Limited. Dr. Ashwini had been CEO of the Construction Skill Development Council of India, consultant with International Labour Organization, and currently director with Ernst & Young. Dr. Ashwini is passionate about human capital development. In Ernst & Young, he had led one of the largest projects in the vocational education and training in Bihar, which aims at skilling youth for sustainable livelihood. Currently, he leads the PMU for the NADCP, a mega flagship program launched by the Honorable Prime Minister of India in 2019 for eradication of the selected disease among the livestock. With heart and soul, we welcome you, sir. Mr. J. Subramaniam. Mr. J. Subramanian comes with over 20 plus years of experience with leading MNCs and prominent Indian corporates like GE, Philips, Infosys, Vodafone, and Gati. He is currently the HR director for Keller India. Keller is the world's largest geotechnical solutions specialist. Headquartered out of London, UK, over the years, Mr. Subramanian has developed and employee engagement. His core areas of specialization within HR include performance management and learning and development. Mr. Subramanian has been recognized by World HR Congress in 2013 and 2015 among the 100 best HR leaders and is certified in Thomas Profiling, Lean Six Sigma, and a qualified trainer from GE. His hobbies include traveling, reading, and involving in various activities relating to corporate social responsibilities. We feel tremendously ardent to welcome you, sir. I now kindly put forth a request to all the eminent guests to switch on their video for a group photography.
Professor Abhijit, please enable Dr. Ashwini Shah's microphone and camera. He has been put under attendees.
Okay.
Please take him to presenters. He still is under attendees.
Just a minute.
Sir, can you speak now? Can you turn on your camera, please?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to all.
Good afternoon, sir. Is your camera turned on?
That's right.
Correct, sir. Subramaniam, sir, is your camera turned on?
Yeah, it's turned on. Can't you see me?
Okay. Professor Abhijit, you can take the picture.
Okay.
Thank you. Prachi, you may now proceed.
Thank you, distinguished guests. It's profoundly delighting to have you all here. I now request the moderator, Dr. Smarki Patnaik, to deliver the opening remarks and then moderate the session. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Prachi. I again welcome all of you to the plenary session of the National HR Symposium 2021. I would just like to make a little housekeeping before we proceed any further. First of all, all the participants are required to keep their audio and video off. And if you have any queries, questions, please make use of the chat box. You can put forward your questions through the chat box and I will bring them up once all the speakers have shared their views and the opinions. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly created a profound change to how individuals interact and how they operate in an organization. It has brought unprecedented human and humanitarian challenges. It has certainly forced us to think about the three basic dimensions of the future of the work, which is the work itself, who does the work, and where the work is being done. As the world is coping with uncertainty of the pandemic, organizations they need to start formulating its responses to the crisis. With the government regulations evolving in a bid to flatten the curve and the economic disruption across the industries, traditional ways of the working have been usurped to a great extent. Talking about the work, there is enough evidence, I believe, that the new technologies could be used to augment the efforts of the workforce rather than actually replace them. In fact, while I was reading and doing my homework for this particular session, I came across a report by World Economic Forum, which was published in the year 2018, that while nearly 1 million jobs may be lost, another 1.7 million jobs will be gained. We also had a discussion on this particular thing, research being done by World Economic Forum in the inaugural session when Dr. C. Jaikumar, he sir actually talked about this particular development, and he said that though 1.7 million jobs will be gained, but we need to be prepared with the required competencies to fill in those jobs. So the jobs of the future are basically expected to be more machine powered and data driven than in the past, I mean, as compared to the past. But they will also likely require human skills in areas such as problem solving, interpretation, and design. So, to make all of this happen successfully, we will likely need to change the way we think of work, the way we conceive of work, and develop the required training our workforce needs to take on the new roles and the new assignments. This was about the work. Now, talking about the workforce and workplace, I think there are certain key shifts which are being observed. First of all, the businesses have started thinking about the alternative workforce models, and they want to leverage the gig economy. And second is the idea of the hybrid workplace, which is basically physical and remote. It is gaining traction, and the policy changes are already underway. And not to mention, needless to say, of course, that working from home has become the new normal. There was another article in Hindu which said that they surveyed 42 reputed Indian organizations, and they undertook a combination of survey, and there was one-on-one conversations with the CXOs also. So they basically analyzed and found out 7 key learnings from the current crisis, which could potentially, accelerate the future of work in India. That included the business continuity challenges, the adoption of collaboration tools, employee wellness and learning, everyone in together, agility, and gig workforce. Here, I personally believe that the move from responding to the crisis to thriving in the new normal is likely to depend on how successfully organizations take their learnings into the future of the work. And these learnings obviously need to be applied across the 3 levers of the future of the work, workplace, and workforce. And that is the basic reason why we have chosen the theme of the symposium. And of course, after the deliberations made by our esteemed speakers, we will have more an in-depth idea about the topic. Considering this as a brief introduction to the theme of the symposium, I would now request our first panel member, Dr. GP Rao, founder, GPR HR Consulting, to please go ahead with his deliberation. Please, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Patnaik. It's a very, very relevant, contemporary, compelling theme that discuss about work, workplace, and workforce. I think instead of discussing about what's happening there, let's come to the organization level. So from an HR lens, let us look at these things from an HR lens. From HR lens, let's talk about the culture. The culture, the focus will have to be first on agility. Agility will include digitalization also. The second one will be inclusion. We'll have to work with diverse people, diverse practices, diverse styles, diverse approaches. So that is the second one, inclusion. The third will be, as an organization culture, resilience. So from HR point of view lens, I talked about the organizational culture, AIR. Now, from HR point of view, leadership development. So, leaders and managers who can integrate both business and compassion, not one versus the other. If they can do one plus the other, it's a 9-9. It is not a total 9. That is the second lens priority for HR. The third will be employees. What kind of employees will succeed in the current and future, or those who can work in hybrid structure? Hybrid working, hybrid workforce, hybrid work practice. So hybrid. Number two, gig. So those workers will quickly switch over to the gig format and start enjoying that format. So those employees will do well. All levels. When I say workers, it's everybody from managers to executives to blue collar everywhere. The third will be upskilling is the order, because the skill requirements are changing so much. Reskilling can get you from one job to the other. Upskilling is required because you'll have to do higher kind of job, higher level of job, a new job. And last one is when you talk about the technical skills or non-technical skills, it's all newer skills. So I'm not going to the details of that in the technology and thing is, I mean, for example, design thinking or destructive policy, disruptive thinking. Those kind I'm not going in. Now, one other thing will be a pillar on which all of this will stand is wellness. When I say wellness, it's an organization level wellness, it's an individual level wellness. When you say individual, it's including the family. So HR has to look from their sense what is required to be done at the culture level, leadership level, employee level. Then, according to them, what about their policies, HR policies, when you say re-energizing? One major change that is happening in HR is policies have to be personalized. Even an L&D has to be personalized. Even a conveyance policy has to be personalized. An IT policy has to be personalized. Compensation is personalized. So it cannot be one formula for all. So that will be the greatest change other than looking at this, that lens has those four areas and changing their parameters. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll be happy to answer either any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we will take the questions once all of these speakers have spoken.
Okay,
I
I thought we'll take the question. That's the reason I finished it fast. No problem. No
So
problem.
if you want, you can continue. So you can take another.
No. We'll wait. Maybe when the questions
Okay.
comes.
Okay, sir. So what I basically pick up from your deliberation is, though it was short, but it was short and crisp, but a lot of things were merged and said in these 5 minutes. So what I basically pick up from your talk is the HR lens, including your culture, inclusion, resilience, and hybrid, organization and workforce. Now here I would like to mention, because I resonate with the term resilience here, I would like to mention, sir, considering the importance of resilience, even ASBM is organizing an international management conference with ACBSP Region 10 in collaboration with IIM Sambalpur in February 2022, and the theme of this conference is building resilience the way forward. So when you said that the importance of resilience, I could clearly pick up and understand the importance of it. So thank you very much, sir. In these 5 minutes, you have touched upon.
You. I went to the extent of re-christening HR as human resilience. I am now trying to promote that. It's all about resilience, resilient people. That's it.
Correct, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Carry on.
Now I would request our next panel member, Dr. Sujeev Nair, CHRO and CTO, Ramki Enviro Engineers Limited, to please go ahead with his deliberation. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Smarky. Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me thank Professor Biswajit Patnaik, the founder and president of ASBM University, and his team for this opportunity, and also bringing us all together to share and hear perspectives on a very relevant topic: work, workplace, and workforce, re-strategizing HR. As Dr. Smarky mentioned to me, I want to spend some time to share perspectives on how we managed COVID, what we learned from COVID, and what is it that we have to keep in mind for future. So the next few minutes of my talk will be focused on the company I'm associated with, Ramki Enviro, one of Asia's leading providers of comprehensive environment management services. Simply put, our company helps customers in managing any type of waste. Just to give you we operate in 6 segments. We manage municipal solid waste. These are waste that comes out of our house. We probably just make a small packet and we put 500 grams of waste in the dustbin. Rickshaw wala bhaiya comes, takes the waste and go. We don't know what happens after that. So the rickshaw wala bhaiyas, they pool at one place and it is collected and then it goes to a transfer station from where it goes into our processing center. Just to give you a small scope, that is where we are based in Hyderabad. We collect about 6,000 metric tons of municipal solid waste every day. So this comes to our center. The waste is segregated to remove different types of plastics that can be recycled. So that's one part of it. The second part of waste, we look at material that can be burnt or that has value to be burnt. You know, it's called refuse derived fuel. A lot of Indian food, we have a lot of fat, paper, wood, cardboard, etc. All this comes as part of refuse derived fuel. This actually goes into our waste to energy plant. We burn the waste and generate power out of it. So that's the second processing. The third segregation from that waste, we do composting. You know, they put into windrows and compost is manufactured and sent. After all this is done, the little part is left and that part straight away goes into the landfill. So just to give you the size, we handle about 13,000 metric tons across India. We have about 45 plants across India, 65 facilities across 8 countries. So I was just talking about municipal solid waste. Similarly, there's waste that comes of industries. You know, all the industrial waste we manage, but the processing is very different. We manage about 11 lakh tons per annum. We also manage the biomedical waste. These are the waste that comes out of hospitals, your aprons, your masks, body parts after surgery, needles, everything that comes out of the hospital. We have about 30,000 plus hospitals across India that we cover. I did mention to you about our waste to energy. We also have plants that use recycling and resource recovery, you know, construction and demolition waste, e-waste, oils, papers, plastic. So that's one. And the last, we are also into environment consulting, where we do wastewater treatment and soil remediation. So that's brief about our company. It's very important for me to set this context because 90% of our workforce, we have about 17,000 plus workforce, and 90% of it are actually blue collar workers. You know, they are the ones who sweep the roads, who collect the waste, who transport. So one of the biggest challenges we had when COVID stuck in early 2019 was how do we engage these 17,000 workforce? How do we connect to them? Trust me, second day after the lockdown was announced, 85% of our people reported into work at their sites. This is not a common feat. I mean, I want to thank all the reporting officers across our facilities who actually picked up the phone, spoke to them, reminded them that we are part of essential services and we needed to be present to ensure the waste is transported and disposed of very well. So that was the biggest challenge, and I very proudly say, second day after the lockdown was announced, 85% of our people reported to work. Well, while that was just the starting, there were many, many things that followed thereafter. While these people came, the prime concern we had in mind was employee safety. And then followed by how do they commute to the place when everything is locked down? How do we organize food for them? How do we take care of health? Now, as HR professionals, I think this COVID taught us a lot of things. It taught us to simplify a lot of things. Very simple, you know, engagement with these people were very important. They were very afraid. What could we do? Could we come? Could we get affected? So one of the things we ensured, you know, those 3 golden things I think all of us would have heard again and again: social distancing, wearing mask, and frequent sanitation. It's not easy to get this into practice in these large workforce, especially most of them partially educated or uneducated. But one of the things we did very fast is we created something called a toolbox talk. Every supervisor, 10 minutes before the start of work, would engage with people to focus on these three things: social distancing, frequent sanitization, and wearing of masks. Of course, it took a while, but I must tell you, today, if you go and look into any of our sites, you will find 95% of our people following these three things. So again, as an HR professional, what is important is the ability to engage supervisors, and the supervisors in turn engage their people. So rather than one person going and doing it across, the supervisors, using supervisors gets very, very important. At the same time, people were falling sick, they were being treated. But one very important thing we kept in mind is every day we were monitoring the number of COVID infected cases, and these were shared with leadership. As we saw people getting affected, we launched something called a COVID assistance program across the organization. First and foremost, all our sites, across our major sites, we procured oxygen concentrators. We enhanced the hospitalization benefit. For those people who had mild attacks, we gave them salary advance for them to get them treated at home. And we also announced that in case somebody passes away due to COVID, one of their immediate family members will be given a job. As a people-friendly company, a lot of such things go a long way in enhancing their employee engagement. When people they came and said that we were not able to travel, we were not getting food, we organized for it. We also introduced something called a hardship allowance. They're taking the trouble to come to our sites and work. So we did whatever we could do. Today, I must tell you, once the vaccines came up, we did a drive. We worked closely with the governments to ensure that we started the vaccination. And I must tell you today, we are at 96% vaccinated, one and the second doses together. So I think first and foremost, considering people as the most important asset and doing things for them. Once you do for them, things will take care of itself. While I focused on what we did with the blue collar, we also had challenges with the white collar workers. And of course, as many would have experienced it, we extensively used Zoom, Meet, Teams. Senior leaders kept engaging with their teams virtually. But two things very uniquely we did during this period. While people saw this as a pandemic, we also looked at this as an opportunity. The COVID was very well used to enhance development of employees. And we exploited the virtual session wherein our own experts, they took sessions internally, on how landfills are there, how biomining has to be done, how incinerators are run. They came and they gave the sessions. Second, from an HRMS point of view, many organizations, there's something called a signing of a registered attendance card. With pandemic, we couldn't do that. This was an opportunity where we completely migrated to a new HRMIS system called Darwinbox. We ensured more of ESS, employee self-services, mobile self-services, many features available on the mobile app. And that actually helped us to a very great extent in reaching out and providing a lot of information. During those times, attrition was low, but many businesses, if you see worldwide, were impacted, especially the airline industry, the tourism industry. But our industry as such, barring some businesses, rest of it, in fact, it increased. For example, if you look at the biomedical division of ours, we were not able to treat that much of waste was coming in. So, there was fluctuations in the business, but at the same time, we had challenges of people engagement, across our sites. Transportation never used to come, goods could not be transported. So then we got in another opportunity to do a lot of CSR work around our communities. We took care of those migrant workers, providing them food, hygiene, masks, sanitizers, medicines, and we worked along with the community. So, a lot of time was spent in engaging communities around us and helping several government departments to come through us. We are in essential services. And today I very proudly say to many of my colleagues that, if you are able to work from home, it is because we were working at our sites. And I think COVID taught us a lot, and we came out of it very, very well. There were a lot of changes that happened in the workplace and the workforce, but the work actually for us increased. So these were some very important aspects we learned. But I just want to also share 4 thoughts for our HR colleagues on what is going to be, or what the future imperatives for HR is going to be. First, automation. A lot of jobs will get automated with this COVID and the pressure on businesses. Roles will start changing. There will be merging of roles, and there will be a lot of automation. So automation is actually going to be the way forward. I told you we also implemented our HRMIS. So one of the things for HR professionals is to be cognizant of this and build their relevant skills in this area. Data analytics, automation, AI, ML, all these things, blockchain, are going to hit the market very fast. They're already going on. Second, of the last few months, attrition is increasing. The market is open and attrition is increasing. So one very important thing for HR professionals is to enhance employee engagement. Retention is more important than recruiting. Of course, recruiting will happen, but I think HR professionals will have to spend more time in retaining people. And how could that be done? By enhancing employee engagement, constant communication, reskilling, training. Dr. Rao just earlier mentioned mental health are very, very important. While we saw a mixed thing, there were some people who were working from home. Initially, the work from home was very exciting. People all wanted work from home. But off late, what I'm seeing is people are bored sitting at home. They say, we want to come to office for some time and work. We are vaccinated. We'll come. So I think full work from office will not be there, or full work from home will not be there. It's going to be a hybrid model. But still, I see many people, they want to retain that little flexibility of 25 to 30% work from home because they can do things at their pace. So some things like these needs to be discussed and organized, and that employee engagement and will become very, very important for retention. Third, company branding and employee value proposition. I think as HR professionals, you should be able to tell someone why they should join your company. How is your company different from another company? What is unique about your company? The employer branding should portray, identify personality and working culture of your business. This is very important. While there are attritions, there are several candidates. You should be able to express to them why they should choose you over a competitor. And if you are able to build this employee value proposition and branding, it'll create a positive sense of loyalty with the business. And while you do this, a very important point is how you're going to portray your business is embracing inclusivity by ensuring diversity. So diversity and inclusion is a very important point. And the last part, very important, we cannot work as individuals anymore. Collaboration and synergy is going to be very, very important going forward. Especially we'll be able to derive a lot of value when there is collaboration between industry, academia, and government in the spaces of environment, in the spaces of social and innovation. So I think to sum up future, there are 4 imperatives: automation, employee engagement, company branding, and collaboration. That's all I have from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I would just just to connect to what you said, I believe we are now talking a lot about employee experience. We have started to talk about employee experience in general. So basically, as you mentioned, when you people asked employees to join back, 85% of them they did intentionally. They came to work. They were conscious of it that it's an essential services. So basically, this engagement is because of the kind of experience they have in the organization. I believe, I can relate it to what Renu ma'am said in the inaugural session. She is the CHRO of DB Skenkar, and one of the participants put forward a question to her regarding the psychological shifts that people are facing being working from home. So she mentioned, as your company also does, she also mentioned that how COVID insurance, working from home initiatives, and all of these steps are being taken by the company to help the employees and also to engage them in a way that adds value to them as well as to the organization. So thank you very much, sir, for letting us know the 4 basic imperatives of future. Thank you. Now I would request our next panel member, Dr. Ashwini Kumar Joshi, to please go ahead with his deliberation. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Samarki. Thanks to Dr. Biswajit Patnaik, Dr. Ray, for giving us an opportunity to interact with all of you. I think the session had been extremely educative and engaging in the morning too, with Mr. Niharanjan Ghosh, Dr. Jayakuma, Ms. Renu Bora, and Mr. Bharat Chhabra. I am extremely privileged to be part of this esteemed panel. And I think whatsoever Dr. G.P. Rao and Sujeev Nair has brought out is the one which today calls for it. And I'm also privileged to be part, in this panel with Mr. Subramaniam, who was also in Gati while I was also there. In fact, after I had left, he continued. So coming back to the topic per se, so let me look at the work. You see, enough has been said, and you also said in the World Economic Forum, the 2021-18-21 report has already said how the work has changed. It has accelerated the digitization, provided more opportunities to work remotely, accelerated the automation, digitization and upskilling, which, Dr. Rao was also saying, and we had that earlier session also, upskilling and reskilling. So that is actually become extremely important for all the organizations. Then, since the businesses were not coming in, some businesses were lost. So there was a certain amount of reassignment of the work also. And, so your workplace did not limit to the current project you are working in or your current assignment. Your geographies changed both nationally as well as internationally. So that is how the work changed. You learn the new skills to match the work profile for those. And then, of course, since the organizations were becoming leaner, so therefore the contractual manpower, temporary manpower, all this, the emphasis on that increased over there. And therefore, now the situation had come where, the organizations are still looking at it, that do they maintain the permanent workforce or do we maintain a flexi workforce to that angle? And that gives a mega opportunity that, working from remote does not limit you to be in the office. In fact, it gives you an opportunity to hire the manpower globally, get the best of the experts, and therefore try and achieve the organization objectives over there. So that is one advantage which comes from the work. As far as the changing landscape is concerned, I think enough has been said on that, the digitization, automation has changed the landscape. The IoT, 4D printing, all this cybersecurity, these are the areas which have come into play. It does not mean that the old, capabilities have gone, but perhaps we need to reskill, upskill, and also cross-skill ourselves. And let me add this cross-skilling. In Australia, for the agri sector, most of the agri sector people, after the sowing is over, thereafter the Australians skill them for the construction, and that is what happens in India also. most of the construction workers, and being the CEO of the Construction Skill Council earlier, most of the construction workers, they came from the agri sector. However, there was no cross-skilling which was done over there. So to see that there's a continuity of the job, Australians were actually doing the cross-skilling so that the people are permanently employed somewhere down the line, right? And of course, as is the workforce is concerned, I think let me look at it that let's not look only in the formal sector. If you look India as a whole, more than 92% are in the informal sector, and 70 to 90% workforce is lying in the informal sector. And that is why Mr. Sujeev was also touching on the same part. So therefore, you have a lot of blue-collar workers also with you. In fact, in this pandemic, I got an opportunity to look at the migrant workers, because as you look at it, there are 3 states which provide the migrant workers largely. This is Bihar, Odisha, and West Bengal. These are the largest migrant workers come from these 3 states. And I could look at it that when the pandemic was there, and these being the migrant and the temporary workers, good companies, they try to retain. They looked after them, they gave them the COVID shield, they ensured that they go back to their homes safely. But many of them were struck, and some of them, as you saw in the videos, they walked on also. So what happened during that time was that these workforce was put in the quarantine camps, and during that time, they were segregated, and we looked at the skill sets whatsoever. So skill mapping was done over there. And that's the time when we started looking at it, which is it that the upskilling could be done. And as you are also aware that since the jobs are decreasing, in fact, the last Niti Yog report which came, that the percentages were decreasing, we started looking at entrepreneurship. And that is what is being called today. So we started developing entrepreneurship everywhere. And that is why, even if you look at it, Gati had a beautiful model, because we had the Gati associates. And when these people who used to retire, we used to see that they get employed as a business partners. So that's a good model, because the people understand the business and they can actually be a productive partner who understand what the businesses are and can contribute towards it, right? And now other part is that let's also look at it, the workforce, besides being in the informal sector, there's a government sector and there's a corporate sector. The government sector has not made change much. In fact, I have handled 2 of the largest projects for the EY in the government sector. The only changes I see is in the e-office, which is over there. And perhaps, what happens is that while they have allowed, because it's a mandate to work from home for those many days, but they still prefer the employees to come to the office with certain percentage and start delivering them. So while EY largely has allowed, even till now, people to work from home, but for the government sector, a certain percentages have to move there, right? Then, of course, I am looking at, as to the workforce is concerned, I'm looking at the jobs are cyclic. Like it happens in the logistics sector also, they are cyclic. They are contractual manpower, they are layoffs, they are part-time jobs. And I think that is going to be the norms. Gig jobs, we keep talking about it. And that is where we need to skill ourselves. I think it gives us a good opportunity to actually increase a bandwidth of work rather than getting stuck in a particular profile. And I looked at it from myself, from being an army man to in the corporate sector, in the HR, and then CEO of a skill company. And then, of course, I also had an opportunity to be a part of the ILO and help the MORD in launching the scheme Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, and how to collaborate and the work. So it gives you a large opportunity to start working, and now in the consulting domain. And look at it from the HR, I've gone to the project management, I've gone to the sustainability and the livelihood. And one keeps learning which are the new jobs, and you adapt yourself. And last time Professor Rao had rightly brought out that every time the institutions, the organizations, they have to make it a learning organization. They have to start looking at what are the new businesses they want to enter in, what are the skill gaps which their organization have, how to strengthen that. Because you can retain your employees if it's a learning organization. If it is not a learning organization, the people, especially in the remote set, are going to get of. And rightly brought out by Dr. Siji that, the attrition rates are going to increase. And let me tell you, the living organizations where the ethics were good, the culture were good, these are the people who are going to retain the people. The organizations which thought, look, their employees cannot move anywhere else, and because there are no jobs, and even to some extent they were getting more work. You see, working from home is very good uh, when you're working remotely, but then everything gets disrupted. Your family life gets disrupted, and so is your work-life balance. And some of the organizations, I won't say, they in the same time frame they were trying to get more work out of the whole people over there, especially when you start looking at the hospitality sector or in the health sector. And I don't blame them, because the health sector needed a lot of demand because the people had to be looked after. Now, as far as the workplace is concerned, you see, so theoretically, your own place, standard lease place, flexible space, co-working space, remote space. So these are all the lingos everyone is using, and there's no single model. There's a hybrid model as it suits. Like I just told you, like EY still has people working from home, but for the government sector, we have to go to the space, and especially for the blue collared worker, especially in the manufacturing sector, in the logistics sector, for the last mile delivery, you need to be on the job to perform. Other part which is very important is, while the work style has changed, but what is more important is how do you use the technology? How do you set your objectives straight? How do you automate the whole processes? How do you empower your people to take decisions, right? How do you mentor them? How do you see that you're totally engaged, and rightly brought out by Mr. Sujeev, that you need to be continuously engaged with the people. You need to start recognizing them. You need to start rewarding them. And they have to be a learning organization. So that is one thing which we have to start moving. Largely, I would say, while the government has started moving, and one good thing they have started doing now is the e-offices. So the virtual offices, because I also realized that, the culture and ethics of any organization is actually the backbone for its growth. And this is sometimes neglected. And let me tell you, while doing a course at IIM Ahmedabad, I found that, the people trusted you. There was a sense of trust. I went for a run, and I was not carrying money in my pocket. I just went to a tea shop. He said, no, sir, you please come and give it anytime you have. The people are sweeping without even getting supervised so properly. They were lifting the lids, and they were so meticulous about doing their job. I think the culture of any organization essential for its growth, for its binding, and to taking it forward over there, right? So a few more points I would like to add is, you see, Dr. Patnaik had brought out that you have to be employable, and that is why the Skill India mission is all about. So therefore, so hiring is not going to be based only on your education. So it is going to be a skill-based hiring. I think it is time for the organizations to start looking at what the students are looking now to be in, and start developing that. And I would congratulate ASBM that even during my time, we had opened a logistics chapter in the ASBM. The courses were structured in such a manner, and they were visiting faculty which used to come from Gati to teach the students and to engage them. So that's the model. And I also congratulate Haryana Vishwakarma Skill University. It's a new university. Professor Nehru, Mr. Nehru is there. And since they didn't have space, so they went to a simple model, that a minimum classroom and maximum in the industry. I think those are the hybrid models the organization, especially in the education sector, needs to adopt. And that is why, even if you look at it, the Director General of Training, they're following the dual system of skilling, where the ITRs are getting adopted by the corporates. The courses are being taught as per the corporate's requirement, so that they get, but then they say that please absorb us. And that is what Tata Tech is doing. That is what L&T is doing by EduTech. So a lot of companies are in those areas where, rather than spending their own money, they're trying to train. And that's what even Gati was doing. Gati had a Gati Academy. And we were trying to take the freshers, and we used to not only they completed the education, but they were also skilled. So by the time they completed the education, they could take the frontline roles together, right? So I think that is all that I have to say now, and more while the question answer session is there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a concise deliberation on the three lingos that you work, workplace, and workforce. Of course, we had discussed about skilling, upskilling, and reskilling in our previous webinar, which you were one of the panel members. So the one left out part, cross-skilling, you have touched upon in this particular session. And from your deliberation, you talked about learning organization and also about digital transformation. I would just link change management to it, because I basically feel that change management forms the crux of any kind of digital transformation. And for any organization to, as because change is inevitable, so we need to keep ourselves updated. And for that, an organization has to be a learning organization. And we got a bonus, because though you're now associated with ENY, but we also got to learn the practices of Gati because of your past association with Gati. Thank you again, sir.
Before you switch on, let me add you one more thing. Emotional quotient is absolutely important, as important, if not more, than the IQ in today's world. Let there not be a transactional dealings with our employees. And let me tell you, I commanded my unit in the worst of the areas, terrorist areas in the JNK. And it is that emotional bonding, which actually motivated the people to go when there were terrorists sitting inside and they could lay their lives. In a similar manner, your emotional bonding with your employees and with their families is extremely important. It doesn't limit to only employees, but also the better part, the softer part are the families. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving forward, now I would request Mr. J. Subramanian, Head HR Keller Group, to please go ahead with his deliberation. Sir, please.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Smariki, and also thank you. I think we had great discussion. Of course, Mr. Rao, Mr. Sujeev, and I know Ashwini from my past job already. So I think we had a great interaction. And so I'm going to kind of keep this a little more relevant to the students, and I'm going to look at it not so much from the workplace and the employees' perspective, but as students who are trying to find their footing in the corporate world. What has changed? What is new? What to expect? There's so many things that I'm seeing now. Keller is one of the, I mean, my employer, which is my current employer, is one of the largest geotechnical construction company in the world. And we've not stopped hiring. And we have we've been hiring engineering graduates for the last 2 years. Even during the COVID, we didn't stop hiring. Now, if you ask me what has changed, everything was automated, everything was digitized. And I was like a little, see, someone who's worked for 20 plus years, I had to learn a lot of new things. So some of my new learnings have been, how am I as effective online as offline? It's very, very important, because when we were doing group discussions, all the group discussions were done online. The written test was done online. The personal interview was done online. The joining formalities were done online. Everything was done online. So everybody is learning it for the first time. It's not like, it's not like only students, but even the faculty on the other side, the employers on the other side, we're all learning this. So if I have to tell you a few things, and especially I'm going to wear the hat of someone who's in the HR role, but looking at students who are finding their footing in the corporate world, what has changed post-COVID? The first thing I would ask the students of ASBM is to make your online presence a little more stronger. By online presence, I don't mean your Instagram or your Facebook. What I mean is, are you guys on LinkedIn? because Keller, we are seeing in the last 2 years, we've become very active on LinkedIn. All our job postings happen on LinkedIn. There's so many times I've become active on LinkedIn only recently. Like, I used to be on LinkedIn, but not as active. But the moment I started getting active on LinkedIn, I'm getting so many connections from other engineering students. I'm getting so many connections from people that work with other companies who they think can make a career with Keller. That kind of a connection. So I'm seeing so much of action happening on all the job postings have gone on LinkedIn. So I suggest that first and foremost, you need to strengthen your LinkedIn profile. You need to be alive and active on LinkedIn. You need to probably follow. LinkedIn has this feature of following. You need to follow whoever you think, whichever industry you want to be, whoever is there, whom you think is a voice of that industry. Let's assume, I'll give you my example. I follow Leena Nair, I follow Indra Nui. These are the kind of people that I follow on LinkedIn. So you get to hear their views on various topics. And when you kind of hear their views on topic, as students, when you pitch for a role in the corporate, you would be in a better position because your thought will change, because you're following the thought leaders in the industry. So that's one thing which I would expect. And also networking. I think there's a huge amount of networking which is happening through LinkedIn. So that is my first and the foremost uh, point that I would like to make for students of ASBM, because you're all going to move and find a footing in the corporate very soon. The second thing I am finding for students that, and this point has been reiterated by all my panelists and all my colleagues, and Ashwini put it very beautifully, skilling, upskilling, cross-skilling, reskilling. I think that he is absolutely true, and this was also brought out by the previous panelists, which is Mr. Rao and Sujeev, where this just cannot be ignored. I mean, millions and millions of students come to us for interviews. There are very few people who make it. It is very, very well known that India has a lot of people, but how many of those people are employable? Very few. So skilling plays a very, very important role. And as students, I would advise you, there are so many online forums, there are so many e-learning courses, there are so many of it. So while ASBM can give you opportunities, it is up to each one of you to grab those opportunities. What have you done in the last year, 2 years, to upskill yourself? Have you enrolled for any new course? Have you learned more than your subject matter? Have so that's going to be very, very important. What differentiates you from the rest of the others? At the end of the day, the job is only going to be one, and there are going to be people who are going to be pitching for the job. The person who's going to get the job is someone who has something different from what the others have to offer. So as students, I would expect that, what is it that you've done? What is the new offering that you have for your employer? I think about it. You may want to, I may not have the answers, you may not have the answers, but when you start thinking about it, you will get the answers for sure. Okay, that's the second point I wanted to make. And the third point is I have to admit, during the COVID pandemic, especially in 2020, and this is no brainer that a lot of layoff happened. A lot of people lost their jobs. Now, if you step back, did we ask people to go? Definitely, in our organization, we asked some people to go as well. Now, if you step back and you relook at why did we do that? What was the reason behind those layoffs? What is the kind of people that got laid off? And when I analyzed and looked at that, your experience in any place can be, you could do 20 things in 20 years, or you could do one thing for 20 years. And the people who were let off were people who just did the same thing for the next past 20 years. They did not reinvent themselves, they did not upskill themselves, they did not cross skill. They were contented doing the exact same thing, but sadly their salary expectations were not the same. If you're doing the same things, you cannot expect different outcome every time. Yeah. So when the organization looked at staff who were not adding value to them, who were doing a repetitive job without upskilling themselves, but the salary moved to a totally different level, organization felt, why should we continue to keep them onboarded? Why should we not kind of, like look at new talent? So a lot of people who and I'm not generalizing it, so please don't misunderstand me, but a lot of people who also we let go were people like that. Yeah. So it is a warning sign for all you students, never be over comfortable in one place. If you're over comfortable, if you get complacent, then I think, you are at the end of the day you have to redefine yourself. You have to look at every time, what am I doing to add more skills on my resume? What am I doing to add more value to my resume? Have I done something different? So these are some of the points that I had to make. And COVID has definitely taught each one of us. And of course, there's already a point on resilience that is brought up. I mean, ability to bounce back is such an important skill. I mean, in today's date and age at Keller, we place a huge amount of importance to mental health, and that's such an important part. I mean, these days we hear so many I mean, of course, in the media as well, we see so many people having mental health issues, and we are recognizing these mental health issues. But resilience is ability to overcome all that and bounce back. And that's where I think as students, you need to look at. I mean, everybody gets depressed, everybody has a bad day, but what do you do to come out of it? How do you change your destiny? I think that's going to be very, very important. So with this, I would like to, take a pause. I think there's been a lot of inputs which have already been provided to you. I would like you all to process the inputs that I have given you. I'd be more than happy if you have any questions. I would strongly suggest you to go and check us out, check our page on LinkedIn and make your LinkedIn presence. And that's about it from my side. Thanks, Dr. Smariki, for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Now we would like to take few questions from the participants, and I already can see some of them. Let me just put forward these questions to you people. One such question is, we have deliberated a lot on employee engagement. So this concerns that how we can maintain our employee engagement during virtual mode of work, basically during the time of the pandemic, as because we have shifted to work from home virtually. So how do we manage that? That is one such question. Anybody who wishes to, sir, among you?
Well,
GP, sir, would you like to take it? Yes, sir, please go ahead.
But if I'll give short question. In a virtual world, even the engagement has to be virtual. So HR and the line managers have to design, curate some virtual offerings. The other day I saw a Diwali Mela on a virtual mode. So we'll have to design virtual engagement offerings. That's it.
So I would like to,
Okay.
have a small input, like a lot of times this is more so in corporates, what do you mean by engagement? I mean, that is a primary thing that we need to ask ourselves. A lot of times when people use the word employee engagement, invariably in a lot of corporates, they assume engagement is all about Friday fun or, having some sort of a fun activities at work. But engagement is not just that. Engagement is much beyond that. Engagement is what is the organization doing to enhance your career at the where you work. What is the organization doing to make sure that you're upskilled? What are you doing and how well are you taking those opportunities to upskill yourself? So engagement is not only about having fun at work. Engagement is not only, and this is where I think a lot of times, the moment we say engagement, people start saying, oh, we will celebrate Dashera, we will celebrate Diwali, we will celebrate, New Year's, and we will do a party. That is not engagement. Engagement is all about the connect that you have with the organization and what does the organization done to strengthen that connect. And one of the easiest and the best way to engage with the employees is what kind of learning opportunities have they been given at the organization, what kind of career growth opportunities have been provided by the employer. Like we recently did an employee engagement survey, and about we got a survey score of about 89%, but 97% of our employees were happy and proud to work with our company. Now, why did 97% say they were proud to work with the company? And when we asked the question to our employees, these were the factors that came in, that they felt that there's a career for them. They felt there are enough and more learning opportunities for them. They felt that they could, the employer was very transparent. And if they had we had an open door policy. If anybody has a concern, they can come and walk up to anybody in the system and get their queries sorted. So that's what builds engagement in an organization. Yeah. So I think that's one thing I thought I will clarify. I'm sorry if I kind of intervened.
No, I also want
I
to
tend to
clarify.
agree with Subramaniam.
Dr. Smarky, I also want to clarify all that what our friend has said. I said we'll have to do it virtually. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
I think, and everything is possible to be done virtually. I'll
Yeah,
give you some
that's right.
examples. What Subramaniam mentioned, it is not only just activity. See, there are 30-minute daily check-ins the supervisors do with their teams. There are monthly open houses that the leaders do with their teams. In terms of training, 30, 45 minutes quick. It's like a pill. Earlier, before the COVID, youngsters used to come and tell me, "Sir, give me one tablet I eat and I should clear in the interview." So, this has actually made many people learn. So, 15-minute, it's called bite sessions, bit sessions. Small Gyan sessions can happen virtually. Talent shows can happen virtually. Like Diwali, as Professor Rao was mentioning, we had a competition, Diya decoration, upload the photographs on our internal platform. You can do that. Record a video. If you're good in literary, if you're good in acting, singing, 1 minute video, share it. There are also employee engagement surveys, quick surveys that can be done. So, engagement is multiple things, everything that can be done. Subramaniam also mentioned the entire interview process, the group discussion, everything was done virtually. So I tend to agree with Dr. Rao and Mr. Subramaniam that anything that you did physically, 90% of that can be done virtually. You just have to be that creative,
Correct.
and that works a difference.
Thank you, sir. Now there's a direct question to Ashwini sir here. What all changes E and Y had to make in its existing strategy because of the advent of COVID? So in terms of E and Y, would you like to talk about it, sir?
Okay, I think let me touch one by one. Firstly, we made sure that the people were safe and their health was taken care. So E and Y ensured that the people work from home and where the government was not letting it to be, a letter went from the leadership to the government that this is a decision taken by the E and Y that the people will work from home. However, your work will not suffer. So that is one part which was there. Second is we started looking at the health issues. For example, when he had taken the health schemes, COVID was not covered. COVID shields were not covered. So we started looking at it that how is it that all the health covers were given to them, and whether, normally they say if you get COVID only once you get a leave. We made sure that anytime, people had any problems, that way EY is very good. They have an open policy that you can work from home as long as your deliverables are there. So that is another good area which is done. Third part is EY never cut down any salaries. EY never cut down any manpower. And coming back to the engagement part of it, I think we had been doing it every time. There were buddy system, there were small networks we had created. Our partners like Coffee with Karan used to have coffee with all the employees, in which geographical wise that they could come and connect with them, and all this information which had to be given to them was given over there. We were constantly engaged with them to see that how do they develop themselves. To that effect, we have collaborated with the ISB. How could we encourage? Then there's another course where we were looking at the data analytics. We have our own MBA, which is recognized by US also. So how is it that the people can study, bring themselves up and learn, etc. And of course, we encourage the cross skilling. I also told you that we were not struck, like people from my team, not only working for India, they were also working because there was a lot of business which is coming from the GCC and from the Europe. So we gave a team chance, and they were thrilled actually, because any new skills which they are trying to learn, it encouraged them to retain themselves, encouraged them to develop themselves. And of course, bonuses were always there. So all those welfare measures, what I'm trying to say is the emotional quotient was very, very strong as the EY is concerned. And we were totally bonded with our people.
Okay, so in fact, even I read that even this buddy system that you're referring to, even Google does that. Whenever there are new people joining the organization, they call them Nuglers, new Google. So, and they have this shadowing and buddy system, which helps the newcomers adjust to the new setting. The next question here is how the recent radical developments in the world of HR has made us rethink and perceive a physical workplace, and whether we can now safely say that workplace is not necessarily a physical entity demanding our physical presence. It's a pretty long question.
No. Let us make it very simple. He is asking whether we'll have to go back to the in-person mode or we'll continue with online. See, every time something of this kind happens, we get a lot of learnings, lot of unlearning, lot of new opportunities come. So one thing that we have learned, that we can work online also. That doesn't mean that everything will go online. Wherever it's convenient, wherever it is cost effective, wherever it is productive, people will prefer to do it online, even after everything is normal. So I would forecast, I would predict a hybrid model will work, and more at the convenience of the people and at the cost benefit analysis from the organization level.
Okay, if Sujeev sir or Subramaniam sir wishes to add to what GP Rao sir said.
I agree with what GP Rao sir mentioned. IT, yes, 80% of the work can be done by computers, or even 90% can be done, no problem. But manufacturing,
Yes.
or organizations like us, where we have 45 plus sites in India, we have to physically be there to perform. So probably some part of it can go online, but not everything.
Not it.
I mean, if everything becomes online, then there won't be need for people like us, right?
True.
So basically, the nature of work decides that, correct? The type
Correct.
of organization, the nature of the work.
That's right.
Correct. I think
Okay,
I tend to agree with what Sujeev said, that while IT influences a lot on the newspaper, so people assume everything has gone online and everything is work from home. That's probably because they are one of the biggest employers after maybe the government. But I guess that in organizations like ours, and I think Sujeev just mentioned, ours is in a construction space, and we have project sites coming across India, and we obviously cannot, buildings can't be built online, right? So we can only have to physically walk into those offices, and for that, I think we need to be physically present. So yeah, that's true. And honestly, I'm
There's
also
another very critical question here.
I'm also
Yes, sir,
hoping
please,
that,
please.
I don't know if you secretly ask most of us, I think we loved the world where everything was not so much online. I think we loved the world where it was blend of online and offline. And I'm really keen that we go back to that world, and, where, because after some time online can get very, very, you just lose the connect with people when you're always online. Yeah. So I'm a huge believer that this blended work is really nice. Yeah.
It becomes life work balance.
Because even IT
I
employees are, there's a huge amount of If you ask a lot of IT people today whether they would want to come back to work, half
They
of
are
them are,
missing the workplace.
yes, they're dying to come back to work. So it's
Yes.
just like that, yeah.
I completely second you, sir. In fact, when COVID started, initially 1-2 months, everybody was quite happy because they got that, holidays and all of those things. And then it started to frustrate people, and it takes a huge toll on the mental, part of it also. There's another very critical question here. He is asking whether the employing organizations or institutions, whether they are creating and upgrading the life leading skills for for their employees.
I always give short question. Yes, they are. But how much? It takes time. But everybody is doing. Everybody, all organizations are doing. Business schools are doing. Academic institutions are doing. Organizations are doing. Everybody is. They want the employees' wellness is important. So they are helping them. But adequacy or not, it is case to case. It differs.
Yeah, so we have something called Employee Assistance Program, and we've tied up with a global partner for it. And what Employee Assistance Program does is it is a toll-free number, and anybody who's going through a bad day at work, or if they are going through any kind of a stress, or if the mental health issues, or anything, they can just call this toll-free number, and there's a lot of options available there. So most of the organizations actually have this now, so that we all believe work-life balance is important and life should not be only about work.
Yes.
Ashwani sir, would you want to add to what others said?
No, I agree. We are also
Any
doing the
new
same
points
thing.
or additions?
In fact, this is a session which has been going on for last, again, a fortnight. It's a repeated session which is taken by every organization because mental health is utmost importance.
Correct. One more question comes to my mind here also because we have deliberated on a lot on digital transformation. We have been talking about technology, and I consider it as one of the most required changes in any organization because it has become imperative now. But though it is easy to quantify through some metrics, how digital transformation is working, but can we critically gauge the level of engagement after any kind of digital transformation in the workplace? Can we understand if this digital transformation has been taken well, whether it is working or not, barring the the matrices available?
I think I'll speak from a lens of a consultant, but organizations will watch for it. All processes they have welcomed digitalization. All processes. Let's not limit it to employee engagement. All processes, people have welcomed the digitalization, and then because of that, naturally the speed has increased, the accuracy has increased, integration has increased, sharing has been useful now, dashboards have become easier. So I think the parameters and the I think also will the parameters, the barometers will come. We can test and say that yes, because of the digitalization, the speed has increased so much, the accuracy is so much, integration so much. It can be done. It can be done.
Yeah. So the way I like
And
to,
so, what role?
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, so the way what Dr. Rao was telling is true. While what we should look as an organization or even is what is the outcome we are expecting from this digitization, and how is the data going to be used? What digitization does is only gives you information. It gives you information which is relevant, but what have you done with that information? I think is what we should look at. And people will say there's been a good move or a bad move, a good digitization initiative or a bad digitization initiative, only when the information that has come from the digitization is being used effectively in the organization, which is what I kind
True.
Correct. So, what role does the HR play in terms of digital transformation in an organization? Because we are all from we're talking about HR, we're talking about digital transformation. So why not bring them together? What role basically would HR play in that?
So
I
we
will
are
give
in,
simple
Let me
words,
give you two
and they
examples.
will. So, Mr. Subramaniam, I will give simple words. He will explain. Awareness, enablement, leveraging, and all the three roles places HR can play a role. They will give you the details. Can you
so
mute that gentleman who is
Professor
disturbing?
Abhijit, please mute yourself.
Abhijit,
Yeah,
Abhijit.
sir, please.
And HR can play that role also, muting and muting.
I request Professor Abhijit, please mute yourself. Okay, sir, please.
yeah, so we are implementing Dynamics 365 in our organization globally. So one of the role that an HR person is playing in the Dynamics 365 implementation is not only are the processes being changed, but the role of somebody who is the catalyst to the change, you know. So we can say digitization, but when actually organizations start to do it, there's a lot of resistance to change because people are used to particular way of working, and it needs a mental change from doing things X way to doing things in a little different way. And the biggest fear of digitization is I will lose my job, you know. And the role that HR plays is that look, we will make things more effective, but that does not necessarily mean you're going to lose your job. We will just upskill you to something else that you know you can do for the organization. So these are some of the things that HR can do when digitization initiative is happening in an organization.
Okay, so Jeev sir, would you want to add to what they said? Anything?
Dr.
Ashwini
Smarky,
sir, Sujeev sir.
I'll give you a few examples what we did. I was telling you, right, we implemented the new HRMIS during the COVID period.
Correct.
So I'll tell you how it changed, right? One, earlier when employees used to come to the various manufacturing sites, they either had to sign a register or put their punch card, and that would be manually entered into Excel. And from Excel, a payroll used to be created and then pay processed. We introduced the biometric and then we integrated that with the HRMIS. So very simply, when a person punches in, punches out, applies leave, automatic calculation happens and it's straight away through the Darwin box, payroll is there. So significant time, effort, and error is minimized. I'll give you another example. Increment letters used to be given in a hard copy. Just imagine 17,000 people. And you know, people used to take some prints, etc. Now, after the digitization, every increment letter is available on their mobile, on their computers. They can just see. So huge amounts of paper saved, ink saved. You know, carbon credits. We got a lot of carbon credits on that. Pay slips. People come and ask pay slips. Now it's very simple. It's a digital copy. We tell people only if you need print. Otherwise, they can always show a digital copy. It's available to them 24/7, 360. So there are many such things. I think when something is getting digitized, at least my experience over the last few years has been, the moment you want to start this initiative, first the workload will suddenly increase because you'll be running two systems parallel, and eventually things go down. Things get faster, better, cheaper, and
Correct, sir. So though I had decided that I won't be taking any more questions, but I saw one question which intrigues me here in the chat box. He's asking whether HR is an administrative mechanism or humanitarian activity.
it's both. It is both. It's both an art and a science. I think Professor Rao, Dr. Rao will be able to comment that better.
HR is a part of the business. HR does business. That's it. Whether if
Yeah.
business includes administration, business includes people management, it includes everything. Business includes strategy. Business, HR does business. HR is
So
in business.
So I think, you know, this is where a lot of people misunderstand HR. and they think it is humanitarian activity. I think everybody has to do a humanitarian activity. HR person is not. HR is clearly a business function. HR is not a people-pleasing function. Sometimes even the business leaders think HR is a people-pleasing function. I'm sorry, but HR's role in an organization is to make sure that everything is happening in the fair manner. Performance is being evaluated in a fair manner. The right employees are given opportunities. The right employees are recognized in an organization. Growth path for the organization. HR is a strategic business partners, which essentially means that if an organization has a strategy, how do we, as from a people perspective, support that strategy? So first is HR is definitely not a administrative or humanitarian activity. It is a hardcore strategic business activity, number one.
Yes.
And as far as humanitarian goes, please, I think anybody can be involved in doing that. Corporate social responsibility is the smallest way in which you can do humanitarian activity, but please don't expect only HR people to do it. I think it's a community that has to become humanitarian, involved in humanitarian activity. So all of us have a role to play in it.
Dr. Smarky, I'll give you
And
another.
sir, anyway, yes, sir.
Dr. Smarky,
Yes,
I'll give
sir.
you a very interesting perspective that I learned from my founder, He's been an entrepreneur who built this organization for 25 years. So he keeps, so in one of the things he explained to me, and I love this analogy. He says, the king is the business leader or the CEO who manages the kingdom, or for understanding, take it as a fort. The king manages the fort. HR is a Senapati. Very, very beautifully put. It gives you multiple dimensions to understand. While the king is taking care of the kingdom, the entire people under the king is managed by the Senapati. And Senapati is extremely important to guard both the king and the kingdom. So as Subramaniam put it, it is a strategic function. It is a strategic business partner. In fact, it is the most component that works both as an art and a science. So just remember this: HR is Senapati, and the CEO or the business head is a king.
Wonderful.
And
again, sir, yes, sir.
No, I just looked at the next question and I was wondering that the youngsters are becoming, thinking that we are like Sri Ravi Shankar or Jaggi, because the next question is more
That is
on
what I was also looking at, sir. Moralistic.
whether it should be moralistic or materialistic. I think it is the best, these questions are best reserved for the spiritual leaders like Jaggi Vasudev or, Sri Ravi Shankar. If you ask us these questions, it makes us look like, we have achieved nirvana, but we are far away from achieving nirvana. But honestly, I think in today's date and age, it's a choice that an individual makes, whether the person wants to be materialistic, moralistic, or whatever. And I think if you want to lead a happy life, it should be a balance of both, is what I feel. But I think different people will tell you different things. Yeah.
Dr. Smarky, I'll welcome that question. I will not avoid. I am telling everybody, all managers, all leaders, supervisors, that you draw a x-axis, you write compassion, on the y-axis you write business, and you do both, and you can do both. Need not be always 9 and it can be 6, 6, 7, 6, but you can do both. It's not, that's a myth that if you do business, you cannot do compassion. It's not that you become very compassionate, kind, you cannot do business. You can do both. That's what HR is doing. HR has to tell all managers, supervisors, everybody to both. Integrating business and compassion is possible. Let's not use the word moral and all. Compassion, business. Very simple words.
Sorry, I think I'm just barging into the discussion. Sorry to all the panelists. And, I got excited about this particular question, and I must appreciate the way Subbu explained, and then our veteran friend GP replied. I must tell the students, those who have asked this question, there are certain human values. And when we call about value and ethics, it isn't the boundary of HR or business or manufacturing or any domain. HR rightly, I think, Subbu has explained that it is just. I know when I started my career in Steel Authority of India Limited, that time HR means that how do we look after the people in a right way. And I sometimes crack jokes that in the learning and development department, if there is a program announced, then our junior guy, they have to call to different senior executive that today menu is chicken. So please come and attend the course. You know, that was the kind of scenario. But when I took the sabbatical from IIM Lucknow and went to SR Group, and I was managing their HR as a head of HR, that time, the entire perspective was different. We drew the values from our the organizational vision, mission, and strategic plan, and then we always see that people perspective. I think that is well said. And students, they keep on getting confused in a young age that whether I would be ethical or unethical or value. It is quite normal, those kind of questions being asked, and several times I address those questions in the classroom also. But they should not get confused that HR means everything ethical. The ethic part comes from a leader, a practitioner. A human being has certain set of values. Organization has certain set of values. Now, no growing organization, a principled organization, they have something unethical. It cannot go together. And the organization in front of us, like Enron, Satyam, there are so many, even the GTB, all these examples are there before us, that if there is any unethical practices are there, it will not be sustainable. So the message is very clear that if we want the business to be sustainable, if we want the business to grow, and we want a performing organization, it has to be ethical. So that is what we have learned. I hope I'm sorry that I barged into the discussion. A dancer always look for a flow. So as a HR person, as a teacher, I could not just resist myself from this particular question. I am sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Biswajit, I just want to add one thing,
Yeah.
You have to explain this to the students very well, and I want to put it in a more simpler way. Again, students, remember one thing. I learned this from my mentor and I'm passing it to you. You can fool one person one day. You can fool two persons 2 days, but you cannot fool everybody every time. Remember that. Ultimately, the ethics and values. I have seen, if you look at some of the biographies of successful leaders, you will find that they were very strong on their ethics and values. So that
well said. Well said. Well said. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I little bit intervene? Biswajit?
Sir Bandyopadhyay, yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine. Oh, thank you that you are attending. Professor Bandyopadhyay is a former Dean of IIM Lucknow, and he is the former Vice Chancellor of, and he is an iconic figure in management education and information technology. He was my colleague in IIM Lucknow. So nice to see you in this platform.
No, actually, no, you invited me. I joined a little bit late, but I was enjoying the conversation, the panelists, the way they are explaining. It's splendid. It's splendid. It's excellent. And the future generations or your future students are going to be highly benefited out of this, deliberations. And they are getting a direction, because the way now the situations are changing, all the silos which have been created in terms of the functional units, they are all getting merged. Who are merging? It is the HR who are merging. So HR's people now cannot run away for becoming a member of the strategic team of the organization. So if they are going to be in the strategic team in the organization, then essentially, as usual, they know all the functional units of the organization, the way they function. And they are the only people, it is not only the recruitment, but also the training requirement of those people. And also in terms of understanding the goods and services that the organizations are goods or services organizations are producing. So role of the HR in the coming days are going to be much strengthened in the days to come. And all the silos which have been created as a functional units of the verticals are getting integrated together. So like in the IT organizations, we have seen it. In the IT organization, you see, somebody today is a team leader, tomorrow he becomes a team member. Similarly, today who is working as in the HR department, maybe tomorrow with their understanding, with the training, they can be posted in the production unit. And this type of silos are going to come in the very near future. Already it has started with the number of startups that has come up, with number of people those who are joining the startups. They are going to be, they are going to be knowledgeable in every aspects of the business. And the HR is going to play a very, very important role in those directions. On the one hand, they are talking about the development of the people. On the other hand, they are talking about the development of the organization. Both the roles and very crucial roles. Who else other than the HR persons can play the roles? That's all. I wanted to add that.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Bandyopadhyay, being here. Thank you very much. And over to Dr. Smarky.
Thank you, sir. I believe your addition and Bandyopadhyay sir's addition to the discussion has added a cherry on the top, cherry on the cake. Thank you very much. I will just take a few last minutes to conclude the symposium and put across my points, just summing up whatever we have discussed. And the current crisis, of course, has presented the organizations with an opportunity to move to newer workplace and some kinds of workforce models also, with many decisions which are being accelerated to support the business continuity. So organizations which are moving to the future of work are likely to see it as emerging as a lever of competitive advantage in a post-COVID world. And they should also consider redesigning work across the three levels, keeping the work humans to best at the center. So this is the right time for the HR heads to recalibrate their priorities and understand what work will look like, rethink the talent models, and also rethink where work gets done to ensure high performance. So in conclusion, I can just say that employers should activate the workforce and use the technology in ways that generate broad and valuable benefits for our organizations and for the society as well. So let me end on a positive note by saying that we have the opportunity to create a preferred future for meaningful work for all. So it's basically it's ours to shape. So on that note, I would thank all the panel members and thank you very much. Over to you, Prachi.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I, on behalf of the ASBM University and the entire fraternity of the institution, extend a sincere vote of thanks to the moderator, Dr. Smarky Patnaik, for efficiently initiating the discussion and paving the way for the effective conduct of this session. Thank you, ma'am. I extend my heartfelt pleasure to the panel members, Dr. G.P. Rao, Dr. Sajeev Nair, Colonel Ashwini Kumar Joshi, and Mr. Subramanian for gracing this session and providing insightful inputs. I must convey my gratitude to the distinguished invitees of our morning session, Mr. Nihar Ranjan Jose, Dr. C. Jayakumar, Mrs. Renu Bohra, and Ms. Bharat Chopra for enlightening us with the commendable talk. Last but not the least, I owe special gratitude to the members of the press, the faculty members, the members of the staff, the coordinators of the symposium, and the student members volunteered for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this management symposium. Finally, I leave you with this inspiring quote by Martin Luther King. An individual has not started living until he rises above the confines of his individualistic concerns to all humanity. Once again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Sajeev. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.